this is MJ, and in today's tutorial I'll be showing you how to crochet our hooded owl blanket, and I will be making the toddler size in this tutorial. I'll be working with Bernat Softee Chunky for this blanket, and I have redone this pattern to only use one strand rather than two that was in the original pattern. So for our eyes and beak, you're going to need white. You're going to need sea green and black to do the eye. If you want to do the eye a different color, then just choose a different color other than the sea green. And then you'll need a little bit of glowing gold for your beak. And then choose your main color. So I'll be showing the toddler size in true gray. And this here is a little bit lighter gray. It's the heather gray. You'll need 2 crochet hooks for this pattern, a 10mm as well as a 6.5mm. The 10mm will be used for the majority of our blanket, but we'll need the smaller hook for some of our finer details. There will be a link in the description box on where you can purchase the hooks with a coupon code. The yarn was provided by Mary Maxim, and there will be a link in the description box on where you can go to purchase yarn for your project with all the amounts needed for each size. So our shells and V-stitch pattern is worked in a multiple of 8 plus 2. So I'm going to be working through a small swatch with you to show you how to work the shells and V-stitch pattern. But for your toddler size, you would be chaining out 66. But for this tutorial, I am going to chain out 18, and I'm using a 10mm crochet hook, and this is a furl streamline hook. Okay, so I've chained out 18. So now what you'll do is work across the chain in single crochets. Now I'm just going to work into the back humps of the chain, but you can work into this section of the chain as well, whatever you find easier. This will just give you a little bit cleaner edge. So we're going to work single crochets now. The second chain from the hook, and in every chain across. So I'm just going through those back humps that you see right here. So now for row 2 of the pattern, we will chain 1 and turn. And we're going to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch. And then we're going to skip the next 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then in the next stitch, we'll work 7 double crochet. So yarn over, go through that 4th stitch, completing a double crochet, and we're doing a total of 7. Then we'll skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and into the 4th, we'll work a single crochet. We'll skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and into the 4th, we'll work 7 double crochet. and then we're coming to the end. So 1, 2, 3, and in the final stitch, we will work a single crochet. So for every repeat that we do of the pattern, so for every 8 stitches, I told you at the beginning, it's a multiple of 8 plus 2, we'll have one of these shells. So you can really make this blanket as wide as you want, and basically that's what you'll have. You'll have one of these big shells for every repeat you do. So I've done 2, so I have 2 big shells. So for the toddler size, you should have 8 shells as you've worked across, because you've chained out a total of 66. So now row 2 of the pattern is our right side, and if you need help just remembering the right side of your pattern, you can add a stitch marker and just place it so that you know this is the right side. So when you finish your work, it's good to end on your right side so you have that nice beautiful edge that you see here. So this will just help you throughout the pattern. Just remember what is your right and your wrong side of the blanket, because it really does look pretty good on both sides. So now for row 3, we'll begin by chaining out 4. Now the chain 4 is going to count as a double crochet and a chain 1. And we'll make another double crochet right in that first stitch, because this is going to make our V stitch. So a V stitch is made up of a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, all in the same stitch. So that chain 4 is counting as that double crochet and chain 1. So now our first V stitch is made. We're going to chain 5. And we're going to skip the shell. So we're going to jump all the way over the shell, and we're going to come to this single crochet stitch we made in the previous row. And what we're going to do in that single crochet stitch is another V. So our V stitch is made up of a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. So these V's are setting us up for the shells of the next row. So if you sort of think about this row as the setup row for the next one, it can help you make sense of it. So we'll chain 5 again. Okay, and you'll have a bigger piece as you're working across your blanket. You're just going to keep doing that. You'll chain 5 across every shell, and then every single crochet, we're going to work that double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet to make our V. Okay, so that completes row 3. So turn your work, and for row 4, we'll chain 3. And this is going to count as our first double crochet. And then we're going to work 3 double crochet all in this chain 1 space. So this is going to be a half of a shell. So for my little piece here, we're going to have half shells on each end and only 1 full shell in between. So our shells are being offset. So here are our 2 shells, and then in between them goes another shell. And as you have a larger piece, that will just work. So this one will be between the next shell, and you'll do a full 7, but I'm showing you a smaller piece, so we're having 2 halves and 1 full. So now what we're going to do is, this can be a little bit tricky when you're reading the pattern. I found this is probably the hardest part that most people have found. So what we're doing is we're anchoring this chain now and we're working into that center stitch of the shell. So the shell had 7 stitches. So what you want is the 4th stitch is going to be your single crochet to anchor it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're just going down into that shell, that 4th double crochet. We're going right over the chain, making a single crochet. So as you can see, it's anchoring it, securing it in that single crochet stitch. Then we'll work 7 double crochet. Okay, so we've completed 7, and we're doing the same thing here. We're going to anchor this chain into that 4th double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Work that single crochet right over top of the chain. And now in the final V-stitch, we're going to work 4 double crochets. Okay, and that completes row 4. So now for row 5, we're going to chain 4. And the chain 4 is counting as 1 single crochet and a chain 3. So now we're going to skip the next 3 double crochet here, and we're going to make a V-stitch in this single crochet down in between the shells. So again, this is that setup row that will set us up for the shells of the next row. Okay, so that V-stitch is made. And we need to do another V over here, but to get across, we're going to do that chain 5. So like row 3, we're in different positions, but we're working the same effect. So we're wanting these V stitches in between the shells. So we're going to do another V stitch over in this single crochet. Okay, so now to finish it up, what we're going to do is chain 3, 1, 2, 3. We're going to skip the 3 double crochet, and then in the top of the turning chain here, we're going to do a single crochet. So the start, we chained 4, the first chain was counting as a single crochet, and then a chain 3, and then we're doing a chain 3 in the single, because we always want the start to match up with the end. And now for row 6, we're going to chain 1. I'll get turned around. The chain 1 counts as 1 single crochet. And then we're going to work 1 single crochet over the chain 3 space and into the 2nd double crochet of the beginning half shell in the row below. Okay, so that is here. So this is counting as a single crochet, and then we're going to do a single crochet down into that double crochet, anchoring this chain above. Then what we'll do is we're skipping over and we're working 7 double crochet into the chain 1 space. So we're working up our shell. gonna grab a yarn ball. I'm just using some scrap yarn for this, so I'm gonna grab a yarn ball to put that in, a yarn bowl to put that in. And then now we need to anchor this chain here, and a lot of this is very repetitive. So it's the rows starting different. This row back here with our shells, we were doing half shells, but this time the end is starting out with those 2 single crochets. So we're going to anchor this into that 4th double crochet, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going over the chain, making that single crochet. Then we're doing 7 doubles to make our next shell. Okay, and now what we're gonna do, we're gonna end, so you would just repeat this across, and what we're gonna do is end with, we're gonna anchor that chain into the 3rd double crochet, so 1, 2, 3. So we're anchoring that with a single crochet, and then in the turning chain, we're working another single crochet. Okay, so our start equals the end. You're of course going to have more repeats in the center of your piece, but this is overall how the pattern is going to work. A lot of it is just repeating across, but we're starting and ending the same way. So now what we're going to do is repeat rows 3 through 6 for the pattern. So I'm going to go back and do row 3 with you, but you can just rewind the video and just keep going through each of the rows because they are just repeating. So repeat rows 3 through 6. Now you can basically make your blanket as long as you want. I'm suggesting about 26 inches for a toddler, but you can alter that based on your own desire. So, but I'm going to go ahead and work mine till it's about 26 inches. So I'm going to show you, we'll just run through row 3 one more time, just so you can see how this repeat's going to work. So for row 3, we do a chain 4. I'm going to turn my work. So we're making that V stitch in the 1st single crochet. So we're going to work a double crochet down in that same stitch. So we've made our first V stitch. Now we're going to chain 5. We skip over the shell and we're going to make the next V stitch. Okay, and then we're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in that last stitch, we're going to work another V. So double, chain 1, and a double. And then for row 4, we'll chain 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to turn my work. And then we're back to working the half shells, anchoring with a single crochet, 7 double crochet to make a full shell. Again, anchoring that single crochet at the top of the shell and then finishing off. So really this pattern, as beautiful and complicated as it may look, it's quite simple and it's really easy to memorize once you get going with it. So I'm going to complete my full size blanket off camera. And then I'm going to meet you back up. We're going to work on the hood of our toddler size. So I'll be using the 10mm hook again for the hood. And what I'm going to do is chain out a total of 7. So I'm going to get my yarn on my hook here with a slip knot, and then we're going to chain out 7. Now I'll be working in the second chain from the hook, but I'm going to be working extended single crochet. So this may be a new stitch for you. If it is, just it's really simple. It's like a single crochet, but it's taller. It's closer more to the height of a half double crochet. So what we'll do is go through, pulling up a loop. We're going to yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. So go through the next chain, pulling up a loop. We're going to yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. So we're working these extended single crochet stitches all the way across the chain. Okay, so I'm coming up to my last chain. And in the last chain, I'm going to work 2 extended single crochets rather than 1. So let's go ahead and put 1 and 2. Okay, so now what we're going to do is work onto the opposite side of the chain. The hood is worked from the back forward, and it's going to go in this oval shape. So we're going around the chain. We're going to come down almost like a rainbow. So basically, that's what we're sort of making here, is a rainbow effect at the back of the hood. So now working to the opposite side of the chain, you should have, sometimes it can be tricky to see what we're working into. So when we work in from, I chained out 7. When we work in the second chain from the hook, you should have 3 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You should have 6 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So not this one here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is going to be, even I need to do that sometimes just to keep myself on track. So we're going to do, on the opposite side of the chain, we're going to go ahead and work 2 in that first. A bit of a mess. And then working down the rest of the chain. So in the next 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so now you should have in total 14 stitches. Now we're not joining this because the bottom of the hood is going to be flat, okay? And then, like I say, it's going to look like a rainbow going back and forth like this. So it's actually rows, not in the round. Now, sometimes I'll crochet over that tail, but I forgot to do that. So you can just weave that tail in. Make sure it's pulled tight to keep this all snug here. So I'm going to chain 1 in turn. So the chain 1 is not included as a stitch. We're going to work an extended single crochet in each of the next 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then what we're going to do is in the next 4 stitches, we are going to work 2 in the next 4. So 2 into the 3rd stitch here. And 2 into the 4th. Now you should have 5 stitches remaining. Just work 1 extended single crochet in each stitch across. Okay, so I've chained 1 and turned, and for row 3, we're now going to work 1 extended single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches. Okay, so now we're going to work 2 in each of the next 6 stitches, okay? Okay, so I've done that, and now you should be finishing off with 1 extended single crochet in the last 6 stitches. So just complete that and we'll meet up again. Okay, so at this point you should have 24 stitches, and for row 4 we're just going to work 1 extended in every stitch across. Okay, so sticking at 24 stitches, we won't increase this row. So I'm just going to go ahead and work those. I don't need to work through all those stitches with you. I'll just meet you up for the next row. Okay, so at the end of that row, we'll chain 1 and turn. And now we're working an extended single crochet in each of the next 8, and then we'll double up 8 stitches. So 2 in the next 8, and then finishing with 1 in each of the last 8 stitches. 1, 2, and then we'll do 2 in each of the next 8. Okay, once you've worked 2 in each of the next 8, you should come to the end here where we have 8 stitches remaining, and then you'll just work 1 in each of the last 8 stitches. Okay, so at this point you should have 32 stitches, and we're done working all of our increases. So we'll chain 1 and turn. Okay, so now for the toddler size, I want you to do an additional 10 rows. So I want you to work up to row 15. So if it makes it easier just to, and as you can see, this kind of has that rainbow look. If you want to mark row 5, if that helps you to count the rows, even move it along if you need to, or just keep track as you go, whatever method you like to use. But sometimes I find it helpful to just add a marker. I know this is row 5 and then I need to do an additional 10 now. So each row is just going to be worked with 1 extended single crochet in each stitch across now. So we're sticking with that 32 stitches, working 1 in every stitch for a total of 15 rows. Okay, so I finished working out my 15 rows, and this is what it's going to look like. So as you can see, as we keep working, the hood comes forward and looks like this. So we're ending on our right side. my tail is here to the inside. So row 1 was the right side and row 15 is also odd. So we're ending on that right side row. So that has the nicer edge. So what you want to do at this point now is fasten off with a long tail, because we'll use this tail to sew the hood to the blanket. So make sure it's nice and long. Okay, and we can just fasten that off. You can take this marker off. We don't need that anymore. And then this tail here, you'll want to weave that in as well. So a couple things for the hood. I took a measure of it just so you can make sure your sizing is correct. So the gauge for the extended single crochet is 7 stitches in 6 rows with the 10mm hook. And it's going to measure about 18 inches. Okay, so if you take your here and here, it's about 18. And then if we measure up the back, should be about 7. Okay, so that is the sizing of the hood. Now next we'll work on the ears, which we're gonna put here. So I'll show you how to do them next. Okay, so we're still using the larger hook. We're gonna take the main color yarn and we're gonna work a magic circle. Okay, so wrap that around your finger 3 times. Just take your hook and slide it through, grabbing your first loop, pulling it through. We're going to chain 1 and work 6 single crochet in the ring. Now we'll pull the ring tight. I like to push my work out of the way just to see these loops really well. So take your tail, start pulling it. It's going to pull in 1 loop. This other loop's popping out. So just take that loop that's pulled, pull the other loop in, and then take your tail and pull. And then we'll just slip stitch to join. Okay, so now for round 2, we'll chain 1, work 1 single crochet in the first stitch and 1 single crochet in the next, and then we'll work 2 in the next stitch. So 1 single crochet in the first, 1 single crochet in the next, and then 2. 1, 2, 1 single crochet in the next 2, and then in the last stitch we'll work 2. I'm going to show you a little trick with your slip stitch join, which is just going to make it a little bit more invisible, that join. So go, instead of going from the front, let's go from behind. Okay, so you're going to push your hook through. Now keep this yarn to the front of your work. Just grab it with the hook and pull it through. And then we'll chain 1. So now for rounds 3 and 4, we're just working 1 single crochet in each stitch around for a total of 8 stitches. So we're going to do that for 2 rounds. So just 1 single crochet into every stitch around. I've worked that around, and now I'll do that invisible join again. So going from behind, push it under the 2 loops of the stitch, bring this yarn to the front and just pull it through. May need to fiddle a little bit, but just get it pulled through. Chain 1, and now we'll work again 1 single crochet in every stitch around for a total of 8 stitches. Okay, and then we'll do our reverse here, slip stitch join, chain 1, And now we're going to do another increase round. So we'll work 1 in the first stitch, 1 into the next 2, and then we'll work 2 in the next. So 1 in the next 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 2. Okay, and I will slip stitch again to join. Pull that through. So this little ear is going to look like this. You're going to want to make 2 of them and leave a tail for sewing. And we can stuff these with a little bit of polyester fiber fill, or you could also stuff it with just some scrap yarn. So whatever you have, if you don't have any polyester fiber fill, then just use some of your scrap tails to stuff those. Pull that through. Okay, so next I'm going to show you how to add the tassels to the ear. So what I have done is I'm using, for the tassels on my blanket, these are the colors that I'm using, the gray, the black and white. We have black and white left over from the eyes, so I just make use of that and use it for the fringe. Of course, you can use any colors you want for your fringe. These are just the ones that I've chosen. You could also do the eye color or even the beak color if you are purchasing the full balls. But of course you could make your beak with just some scrap yarn or your eye color with just scrap yarn as well. So I've cut 3 of each color. So I have the black, the white, and the gray. So 3 of each color, 14 inches in length. Okay, so then what you're just going to do is take it in half. You're going to take the ear, and what we want to do is place our hook, just push it through the top here, basically under that first round of stitches. It's going to be a bit snug to get all of those pulled through, so you just want to make sure you pull them nice and tight on the hook and then pull it through. Okay, so you want to get it through like that so that you have a loop. You can get your fingers through. And we're just going to knot the tassels, okay? So you're going to have lots left over, but just to make it easier getting that knot pulled through, I make sure you have lots. Now you could leave the tassel really long like that or just give it a trim. These aren't the best scissors, but they'll do. So you just want to make sure that they're both about the same. It looks like I judged them pretty good. They're about the same. So that is the ears complete. So what we'll do with the ears then, let's see our hood, is they're just going to go here on your hood. So you can kind of like just fiddle where you think that they look. I like this part of the knot the best for the front. So if you want your tails going to the outside to start, and then you just want to make sure that you're sewing them to the same rows. So this one here, I would start sewing it at about here. This one the same, just to make sure we get them on here nice and even. So you can take a little fill. It's just going to make them a little bit more sturdy. I always have lots of this on hand for all of my projects, pumpkins and whatnot. So it's always good to have a bag of it handy. And then when you're sewing, use a nice big yarn needle for bulky yarn. And you're just going to go through the hood, through the ear, and I just like to work my way around. So if you kind of flatten it like this, have to think of this actually sitting on your head. So you want to just go around, going through each stitch, basically through the hood and a stitch of the ear. Now what I suggest is to not weave this tail in until you have both of your ears sewn on, just in case you need to readjust them. If you get them on there and they're uneven, or you just don't, maybe, you know, you've gone too close or too far apart, just leave the tail until you have everything sewn in place. And that way, if you need to pull it off, you're not having to cut or anything. So just, that's a little tip, and I follow it myself. I don't weave any tails in until I'm sure that my placement is correct. So now to work the eyes, I'm going to drop down to a 6.5 millimeter crochet hook, and I'm working with black sea green for my eyes. I love this color, and you'll also need white. So I've made one eye already. Now remember, you can use any color you want for your eye color. I just love this blue, this greeny sea green blue color, so that's the color that I use for my owls, but anything you like is fine. So I know the black will be a little tricky to see to start out with, but we've already worked through a magic ring when we made the ears, so you should already be familiar with the technique. So we'll make a magic ring again. And pulling that first loop through, we're going to chain 2. I'm going to work half double crochets for this eye. So we're going to work 9 in the ring. Okay, so on my 9th stitch, we're going to change over to our eye color. So I want you to pull through. Don't yarn over and pull through with the black. I want you to pull through with your eye color. Give everything a good tug. Now, what we need to do is tighten up the ring. So I know this is a little tricky with all these tails right now, but just try to pull your work out of the way. Take your tail, pull it in, find that loop that's pulling, give it a tug. It's going to pull the other loop tight. Then just take your tail, give it a tug. Now we're going to join, but we're joining with, I like to give my black a tug here. We're joining with the eye color. So what we're going to do is that backwards sort of reverse slip stitch. So make sure you pull that blue to the front. We're getting under that stitch. So you're going under those 2 loops of the stitch, and we're just pulling the yarn back through. Everything needs a good tug, okay? Just so that we have this becomes invisible. We're going to chain 2, and then we're going to work 2 in every stitch around. So 2 half double crochets in the first stitch, 2 in the next, and just work 2 in every stitch around. We're going to have a total of 18 stitches. Okay, so now on the last stitch, similar to the other round, we need to change to the white. Okay, so we're yarning over now with the white and pulling through all 3 loops. Make sure we give the tail a tug. So we're slip stitching now with the white, and we're keeping the yarn to the front, go through that stitch, get under both loops. You're gonna grab that white yarn. Like I say, sometimes you have to fiddle with it, pull it through and tighten everything up. And chain 2. Then we'll work 1 half double crochet in the first and 2 half double crochet in the next. So this is now the pattern working around. We're going to have 1 and then 2 in the next. So you can work that all the way around. Okay, so I've worked all the way around. I'm going to do my slip stitch in reverse, chain 2, and the final round we'll work a half double crochet in the first stitch, whoops, a half double crochet in the next, and then 2 in the next. So 1, 2, and then 2. Okay, and just repeat that pattern around. Okay, so I've slip stitched a join. Now what you can do is weave these tails, or a little easy, quick way to do this, because they'll be sewn on the hood, is to give them a little knot and just trim them. So you can just knot them and give it a trim, and that would work fine. So I have my 2 eyes. Now what you want to do is see, I haven't sewn on my other ear yet, but let's just see how the eyes fit. Okay, they're going to cover basically the whole hood. So you can see like this. Now, if yours are too big, you can always try dropping a hook size. If you want your eyes even smaller, I suggest doing single crochets instead of half double crochets. So that's another way you can get them a bit smaller. But otherwise, they are going to look really big on the hood. And I'll just measure them so you know the diameter. Okay, so they are about 5, maybe 5 1/4 inches. Yep, just about 5 to 5 1/4 inches. So that would be the sizing for our toddler. So you can just fasten off. Make sure you leave a long tail, because we need to sew the eyes onto the hood. Okay, so I'm going to show you another little tip to have a seamless join when you finish the eye. So on that last stitch, what you just want to do is, instead of joining, just cut your yarn and pull that through. So then what you want to do is take your yarn needle, go through the first stitch, you're going through both loops. And that's sort of making the one side loop of a stitch. And then you're going to go back through the center of the last stitch, so through the back loop only. And then that makes the other loop of the stitch. So you basically can't even tell where the join is. Okay, so to make the beak, I'm going to be using glowing gold and a 6.5mm crochet hook. Now you can always double up 2 strands of any worsted weight, because all you need is a little bit of this color to do the beak. So we'll start out with a slip knot. And then we'll chain 6. Now we're going to be working in the second chain from the hook, but I'd like you to turn so that you can see the back humps of the chain. We're going to work into those chains instead of this side of the chain. So we're going to work a single crochet. Then we're going to work a half double crochet in the next. We're going to work a double crochet in the next 2. And then we're going to work a treble crochet in the final stitch. So yarn over twice. Find that little back bump can be, so we're just yarning over and pulling through to finish that. Okay, so working through the back hump just kind of gives this a little bit nicer edge on the side, a little bit more cohesive with this side. So now we're just going to fasten that off with a long tail for sewing. Pull this through. And take a yarn needle and just weave in that starting tail. I like to just kind of go down and back up just to get that out of the way. And then we'll start sewing the pieces onto the hood. Okay, so now what we're going to do is just give the hood a little bit of a tug. So stretch it out just to make sure the eyes are going to fit well. I'm happy with my ear placement, so I can probably weave those in now. So what you'll do is now place your eyes, get everything lined up for sewing. If you want to pin them down, that's fine too. So again, just make sure when you sew this, you're not going into that stitch. So if you need to give it a tug, and then the beak will go right there, sort of on top of the eyes. So we'll do the eyes first. I already have my yarn needle on this one. So what I like to do is just start grabbing a little piece of the hood and then working through the back loop only of the eye. So I'm just holding it down, going up through the back loop. I'm going to go about every other stitch instead of every stitch. And just work your way like this all the way around. Okay, so I've worked this around. Carefully weave. This yarn needle is a little big for doing that. I'm just going to carefully hide the yarn tail through the back of these stitches. So you want to weave one way and in the opposite direction. I have another needle like this that might work a little bit better. Just want to try not to distort the eye. And when I trim this, I'm going to trim it to the inside. Okay. So I'm just going to weave these tails out of the way. And then I am going to position my other eye and I'm going to get that sewn on as well. Always when you're weaving, you're just wanting to go one way and then back in the other direction. When you do a lot of weaving, that's why you definitely don't want to weave those tails until you're sure. Now, a little tip for the eye is as I'm sewing, I'm joining these eyes together, and that's just so you don't have it doesn't look weird when the hood is pressing. So just a few stitches, you're just going to go through the back loop on this side, back loop on that side. Just attach that. If your eyes are really big, you can always slightly overlap them. But mine, I've just attached them there, and then I'm going to continue to just sew it to the hood around. And now to sew on the beak, I'm going to use this needle that's not quite as big. Okay, so you're just placing the beak here in between the eyes. And then we're just sewing through. Just try to be as neat as you can. And if you don't like it, remember again, don't weave until you're sure that you like how it looks. And I just like to go through when we're to the stitch portion, the back loop only. Okay, and I'm just going to continue going all the way around. Okay, so I've worked up here to the end. Then I'm going to want to weave. Making sure, again, not to distort. You can kind of fiddle around with it. Make sure it looks good before you do this final weaving. Okay, and then you can just trim. Okay, so I've been working away on my blanket and it now measures about 32 inches wide by mine ended up being close to 27 inches in length, 26 probably more from the center if you go and measure out at your edge. It's maybe about 27, so somewhere in that length is fine. And I'm just leaving. So I've ended on a row 6. You always want to end on a row 6 or a row 4. so that we're ending with our shells. And I am just gonna leave my ball attached and this right here like this so that I can edge it. But before we edge, I wanna add my hood. So we know we're ending on the right side, okay? So this is the right side of our work. So then what you want to do is get your hood, and we want to center it along this first row. So the right side of our blanket is going to be basically the back if you were wearing the owl blanket. So you can put the hood on. So if you're wearing it, this is the back. So if you lay your hood down like this, this is how we're going to sew it to the top of the blanket. So all you want to do is center it. I've given you a rough estimate of inches on either side, but basically you want to make sure that you have equal amounts on either side. So if your blanket's a little bit off in your measurement, that's really fine. All you want to do is center it. So what I like to do is add some stitch markers just to make sure. And you really can count even the stitches because we've worked in that back hump. You can kind of just count your stitches over. So 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm going to say about 12 on that side, and then I'm going to come over to this side and see. Okay, so what I did here is I counted over 13, and in the 14th stitch, I attached the hood with this marker. Did the same thing on this side, and that's about 7 inches. If you give that a little tug, that should measure about 7 inches roughly on each side. So then what you're going to do is take a yarn needle for bulky yarn, take the tail that we left attached to the hood, and then what you're going to do is go through the back section of the hood I'm just going to go through this first stitch twice. I'm going to remove that marker. And then we're just going to sew it all the way across to our other marked stitch. So I just like to sew it through here, each stitch going across. So taking a piece of the hood and going through the stitch. Okay, so I've worked to the end. I'm just going in that stitch twice, and I just have enough yarn, so if you run out, you can always add on more yarn. But making sure you've left a good long tail from the hood is a good idea. Okay, and you want to try to get that going back in the opposite direction to secure it. Okay, and I can just trim that. So now we have the hood attached and we can start doing our edging, which is just gonna tie it all together. So I'm gonna come back down with my larger hook with the 10 millimeter, and we're just gonna join back onto the working yarn. I'm gonna chain one. We will not edge this because it already looks beautiful. So we're just gonna do the sides, the top of the blanket across the hood, and the other side. You want to just evenly space out these stitches as much as possible. So I am going to put 2 in that bigger space. The big space here as well, I think 2 would be appropriate for that spacing. 1 stitch here, so we're just doing single crochets. So as you can see, these bigger spaces, you want to put 2 single crochet. All the bigger spaces, 2 single crochet. The smaller space here, we'll just do 1. Okay, and just continue. You just want that your stitches are going to not distort the blanket, so you don't want too many, you don't want too few. You can tell just by looking at your edge how it looks, whether you need to adjust. But if you follow this pattern sort of that I'm doing, these bigger spaces, 2, and then that smaller space, only 1, it should work out well for you. Okay, so I'm just going to continue. I'll work up and I'll meet you up at the hood. Okay, so I'm coming up to the corner and I want to add 3 in the corner. It's just going to give us a nice corner edge. And then we can begin working across. There's that first stitch there. So you should be working across 13 when we get up to the top here. 1, 2, that looks good. Okay, so I've worked across 13. Now we're reaching the hood. So the hood, you can easily see each stitch across the hood. So we're just working now across the hood in each stitch. The yarn is twisted up here. So I'm going to continue across working that, and if you have sewn your eyes correctly, you should easily be able to work down into those stitches. We're going to work across to the corner. Make sure you work your 13 stitches across, then do 3 stitches in this corner and down the side, and then we'll fasten off when we get down to the bottom and then weave in all of our tails. Okay, so I have worked down here to the bottom. I am going to slip stitch just in that first stitch just to join it up, just so that edge looks nice and clean. I'm going to fasten this off. Then you can just weave in any of your loose tails. We're almost finished. The next step is going to be to add our fringe up the sides. And just do some weaving just to make sure our tail is nice and secure. Okay, so I decided to change up my fringe on his ear. I thought, let's just add in some color. So I added in the blue and the yellow as well, just to give him a little bit more of a pop. And what I'm going to do on the side is, again, one of each color. We're using up all our leftover bits, and I'm cutting them at about 12 inches. Okay, so you're just folding it in half. We want the right side of our blanket with our nice edging. And to get the nice knot, what we're gonna do is go through the stitch. So we're pushing the hook up through the stitch. We're gonna take all of those strands, pull them nice and tight to the hook so that we can pull that through. And then we're just going to pull that, and then we can obviously give it a nice trim. So that they're all even. Now what you can do is just now evenly space down both sides of your blanket. So what I suggest is taking your yarn, cutting a bunch cutting a bunch of pieces so that you can work away at it. I'm not going to say specifically how many to do. I'm thinking probably every other stitch, because this is fairly big, so maybe every other stitch, but you could probably do it every third. I know this can be the tedious part, cutting up all this fringe. Another tip, just so your strands aren't as wrinkly, is taking your pieces from the outside of the ball rather than the inside of the ball. Let's see, I need some gray. So I measure out 12, and then you can just go back and forth. If you want to get several pieces at one time. But it's really up to you how you want to cut your fringe. Like I say, it is sort of a tedious job, but you could sit in the evening while watching TV and cut it all up. You even get your family helping you. The only thing about doing multiples is, again, separating out your colors, making sure you have one of each color. But if you want to just get your little piles together and work then from your piles, really whatever technique or method you find that makes it good for you. So I'm going to go here through that third stitch and see how I like how this looks. That's going to put your fringe fairly close together. So if you decide to go, you'll use less yarn if you space them out a little bit more. So again, that is up to you as well. So if I go into the third, leaving 2 stitches in between, it's going to look like that, which I think looks good, and then I can just trim up. Now, if you find that your fringe is really not laying flat, you can just give it a really nice steam when you're finished. Just steam all of the fringe. I just want to make sure you don't steam around the eyes and the hood, because it will really expand the stitches and loosen up those eyes. So make sure just to steam just your fringe. And for washing the blanket, you can hand wash, or if you do wash it in the washing machine, make sure it's on a gentle cycle, and I would lay it flat to dry. I wouldn't put it in the dryer, just because you don't want all of your pieces, again, to stretch out. So this is our final step for the blanket, is just to complete the fringe, working down your sides, both sides, and then your blanket is complete. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and tap the bell to stay updated on all my new videos and tutorials. Thanks so much, guys. Have an awesome day.